Hey guys, so we have some new information on the SJM case, and it comes from SJM's father's blog. He's been really ruminating on how unfairly he's been treated, especially by SBS Hot Daddy Show, as we have covered in some previous episodes here. And in particular, how SBS and that show has misrepresented the facts. And you know how ironically we've been saying that Mr. A's lawyers have been really quick to try to sue people for saying stuff in a way that seems like they're trying to put a muzzle on people and limit free speech, where in the whole process, ironically, it seems as if the biggest purveyors of fake news has been that show, according to SJM's father. The show has shown the reenactment of the drunkenness to be highly exaggerated. He also said that he even titled one of the blog posts 86 meters to emphasize how the show egregiously misrepresented a factual number. They said that the fishermen were about 80 meters, and in Korean, that really represents 80 or under. So in people's minds, that's about 70 something. Whereas if it's 86, that's more like they should have said 90. About 90. So that really does show that they were trying to make it look like, oh, they were so close that they could have seen really somebody go into the water. And he really went hard on the misrepresentation. Now, this was actually, you could see how it was truly either a mistake or outright a misrepresentation of about 10 minutes, where they try to make it look like the parents of Mr. A didn't spend that much time kind of like going around like they were casing the joint, like, trying to scavenge around, looking and collecting things instead of searching for the son. So he was the one that brought this up. He was the one that brought the receipts out. It wasn't other people, talking. So if the lawyers, want to really attack that kind of position, they can really go after SJM's father and his blog. I mean, if they want to send a suit out, they'll have to go. That would be really interesting to see. Would they sue him for defamation? And why not even have SJM's father sue SBS for defamation? So Mr. Shin also has received his papers for defamation, and that was like a week ago, and when he got it, he was just like, whatever, bring it on. Like, he actually didn't care. And he was saying, like, what did we do that was actually in any way where this would have any merit? He said, we didn't even say the guy's name. We don't even know what he looks like. And quite honestly, we don't even know anything about this guy. The only thing we've seen are his legs. And, quite frankly, he has quite nice looking legs, but that's all we know. And, if this guy were in the United States, if he were doxxed, you would know everything about him. I mean, you would know his name, his social security number, his address, his last 3 meals, like what color his car was, his brothers, his sisters, like the list, like the standard doxing list. Like, you would know everything. Like, within 30 minutes, it would be on Twitter. So, I mean, if he wants to go on the route of like, oh my God, I can't believe all this information is out there, I mean, they should consider themselves really fortunate that, it's just one letter. The letter A. But speaking about this, the point of this video actually might surprise you, because I think we need to talk about justice for Mr. A and his family. So I think we need to be very frank about what people feel. Instead of saying that people feel that the police investigation had faults in it or that they may have made mistakes in the investigation, I think we really need to say that there has been enough evidence that people feel like there has been a violation of trust and integrity and in the quality of the investigation. And what do you do when you're faced with a situation where you don't like the quality of something and you don't trust something that you got, especially if you paid for it? You want a refund. So you take it back. You want a refund. And if you can't get a refund, then maybe you want an exchange of an equal or similar item. So right now, the debate is, okay, well, if the police can't do another investigation, a refund or an exchange, well, a similar item would be the prosecution. And I believe that this is something that should be done in the name of justice for Mr. A and his family. Because if we do not reopen the investigation, especially from the prosecution, they will not get justice. We will not have justice for Mr. A and his family. Why? Because we're looking at the whole thing backwards. Because the whole argument for the police for ending the investigation was saying like there's no evidence for the police to continue to go forward because there's nothing criminal about this in terms of evidence that has popped up. But what they were doing is looking at the whole situation backwards, because in the initial stages of this investigation, we really have to ask, did the police do the initial investigation correctly? Did they look at the person of interest correctly? Did they collect the evidence correctly? Did they act quickly enough? There is a saying in Korean, 시작이 반이다. That means beginning is half the battle. And did they really make sure that the beginning was correct? Because if they did not follow their own protocol or procedure in the beginning, then the rest of the investigation could be flawed. And that'll forever hang upon the reputation of Mr. A's family. They'll never be able to clear it, and they'll never be able to get justice in the eyes of the public. Second, we really have to think about the police and their reputation in the eyes of the public. This case will forever hang on the police. They will never be able to get justice themselves. Every time a police officer goes into the public in a similar situation, they won't be trusted. Every time perhaps a family member or a friend who's a police officer, they won't be trusted. I mean, how are they going to face that discrimination in society? It is just not fair, just because of this case, and they might not have even been involved. And that is unfair. That is unjust. We really have to clear the name of all police officers because they do not deserve this type of treatment, because there might be some suspicions that are lingering from this case. So Mr. A has to be exonerated. His family has to be exonerated. The police have to be exonerated as well. And if it does require the police to separate themselves from the investigation now and have the prosecution do it, then perhaps that's going to be a huge weight off of their shoulders. And we can allow a way for the people to feel more comfortable and for the police to actually then have a measure of justice too. Because if we do not reinvestigate this case, A and his family will be forever damaged. They will never be able to live a normal life. Even if the police close this investigation and say it's just a missing person case or a drowning incident, the public will not believe it, and they will forever be branded with the scarlet letter A. And so this case must go to the prosecution so that we can investigate it properly, because we need to have justice for A and his family. It has to be investigated properly. Okay, so let's go specifically into the reason. Reason number one, we owe it to Mr. A and his family to figure out what happened between the hours of 3:30 a.m. to, let's say, 5:30 a.m., but in particular 3:30 a.m. to 4:30 a.m., because the classic checklist of a person of interest is method, opportunity, motive, no alibi, and last person to see them alive, which Mr. A fulfills, because he was the last person with him. He was confirmed on the riverbank when SJM went missing and died in the river. He said he was asleep, but he was of course blacked out and couldn't remember a thing. And while he was blacked out, remember, it was from 11:14 p.m. all the way till about 7 a.m. He had done many things, like go to the convenience store 3 times. He had gone for a jog to meet the Coupang Eats man to collect some food. He had even done a mini photo shoot, video shoot, dance performance for Instagram. He had taken a little nap on the grass. He had called his parents. He had even taken a taxi ride back home. He'd gone back to the park with his parents. He'd taken a walk around. He had even returned a cell phone to SJM's parents, all while blacked out, and he didn't remember a thing. So he's done a lot of things that he couldn't remember while he was blacked out. So while he was confirmed to be with SJM from 3:30 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. on the riverbank, he also didn't remember, and he said that he was asleep, but he could have been awake too because he didn't remember and he was blacked out. So I think we owe it to him to clear his name and get him justice, to figure out what happened between 3:30 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. because we do know that is when SJM went missing and died and somehow ended up in the water. As of right now, we must let Mr. A go under the presumption of innocence because there is no evidence that points to any kind of criminal activity whatsoever, but we should give him the justice he deserves to figure out what happened between that hour, because that hour is still a black hole and it is missing, and it did not complete the story and the timeline in terms of the investigation properly. To give us a sense, fulfill the obligation of the investigation of Mr. A as a person of interest, especially during the critical hour, to investigate properly how SJM died. How did the object of our investigation die? Because remember, the object of our investigation is not Mr. A. Mr. A is not the point of the investigation. Remember, he's not even an official suspect. The focus of our investigation is SJM. We have to figure out what happened to SJM. SJM and his outcome is still a mystery. We haven't solved the case of SJM. So we must keep going. And in order to keep going, we must clear Mr. A's name and give him justice, because he still will forever be suspected, and he does not deserve that. Because he did have apparently one memory. Let's review his one memory of the evening, where he said that he did vaguely remember when he did interact with SJM. Let's go over that. He said, "Of course, I don't remember the time. I made a groaning sound and I tumbled. I was pulling that thing up when I got my clothes and shoes completely muddy. You know, there's a flat area, slope, and river. That's where I fell, and I would have pulled it up. I would have pulled it up." So there's a lot of questions that perhaps people are unjustly blaming Mr. A for that we should really resolve. I mean, they really are making a big deal out of why he threw away his shoes. I mean, especially when, they say that it didn't look that muddy. He said that they were completely muddy. But, when he walked in the tunnel, they didn't look that muddy. They didn't. And, he says that they weren't, wet. Other people are saying they were wet, but he said that they were muddy, but they didn't look that muddy to me. Did they look that muddy to you? And he said that he got completely muddy, but I didn't see a speck of mud. So I think perhaps he needs another chance to try to clarify. And he said that he would have pulled it up. What would he have pulled up, and why did he use the words would have? So does that mean he left it down there? And when? So these all happened. All of these actions happened when he was blacked out. So I think we really need to give him a chance to clarify so that he can really move on from this, because sometimes these types of things can really linger with you and it can really screw up a person. So we should give him this opportunity. Especially since, as we've seen from the text messages, before SJM went to the park, Mr. A really was persuading SJM to come along and drink with him. I know a lot of you guys have really asked, what about the conversation from the friends? And what about any kind of testimony or any kind of character statements from the friends? Why aren't the friends talking, or why can't we hear about what the friends have to say? That's a very good point. And the only thing that we really have in at least the public sphere is that last Kakao Talk message that the father has released, where SJM was talking to that other friend saying hey, you want to come along? And then they have this back and forth dialogue saying yeah, it's kind of weird that he's asking me, and it's kind of weird like this. And then the father also released the message because it was also being misrepresented by Hot Daddy's show. Hot Daddy tried to make it look like SJM was so eager to jump at the chance to go to the park, where it was way the opposite, where Mr. A really wanted to just keep drinking and there was nobody wanting to go drink. And then SJM was just kind of okay, yeah, next time, whenever he got the chance. And then Mr. A was well, how about now? And he's what? It's 10. He's yeah, everything's closing because coronavirus. How about now? He's what? And then SJM side conversation with the other friend, what? This guy is saying you want to come out now? And he's what? And the other guy was I'm studying. And then he's no, come on with me. He's no, kind of can't. I gotta study. And so somehow he kept convincing SJM to go, and then SJM does go, right? So, I mean, is there a motive there? Is there a hidden motive with that kind of persuasion, this really strong type of recruitment to the river? Why all of a sudden? Why is he so persistent in trying to get SJM to the river? And why did he buy so much alcohol that doesn't seem like a normal amount for two people to drink in such a short period of time? Was there some sort of motive? Was there some sort of nefarious action? That is something that people would assume. And with no evidence of any type of criminal kind of, evidence out there, we should give Mr. A the chance to clear his name, because people are suspecting something. This is so wrong. We should give him a chance because he needs to have justice in the court of public opinion, because there are so many people who are just going to continue to look at him horribly, and it's just not fair for him. He really has to have a clean slate with an official investigation so that he can really clear that up, because that does look like a motive. It looks like a motive for him to be trying to convince another guy to all of a sudden take him out to some sort of remote area by the river, get him really, really drunk, and then suddenly, without any kind of explanation, he ends up in the river and he's gone for 5 days and he suddenly ends up dead. He really should have a chance to clear that up. Now, there's a second reason why we should really have another investigation, because remember our favorite ninja YouTuber? He went to the park again and he found a major glaring error in the police report. You know how there is that drawing and that diagram of where the witnesses were, and X marks the spot, like the 0 origin point for SJM and Mr. A? That should be the most accurate and most important spot. Well, that spot is wrong. That spot is erroneous. Of all the spots to get wrong, that spot is wrong. So he found the little water channel, so when there's rain, so that the water can just flow right into the river. He found out that they had actually placed it to the right when it should have just been to the left. So that actually places it even closer to witness number 1, which makes witness number 1 even more suspect, even more implausible that witness number 1 existed, or witness number 1 was in that area when they say witness number 1 was in that area according to the report. You see? So that kind of error, that kind of glaring kind of misrepresentation of the facts, that's not fair to the police. Because the police, now they're going to be really ridiculed, and they should have the chance to really clear their name with another investigation, so that they can kind of see, like, if there was a mistake done, then they can really hold the people accountable who made the mistake and just explain how that happened, and not have it affect the entire police department and, ruin the reputation of all the people who work there. Just, explain what happened, or if it was not a mistake, what if this YouTuber made the mistake? Well, another investigation would reveal that, but the way that he really showed the evidence, it looks very accurate that he is correct, and it corroborates all of the other evidence that we have collected so far that he looks like he is correct. And we have already shown multiple times that the evidence inside of that police report has numerous mistakes and errors, and we don't want to have future reports from the police not even be read or trusted by the public. I mean, is every other report just going to be sent back for a refund? I mean, what kind of society is that going to turn into when we're never going to accept any government report? I mean, that's not fair. The police also deserve some justice too. So in order to clear the police's name, we need to have another investigation. Also, you know how I said that SJM's father has been writing on his blog very often these days, making accusation after accusation. I mean, he has been really pointing the finger a lot at Mr. A's family harshly. And you know how in the report, the police just really minimized the head injuries and then the cheek injury? Well, now SJM's father is really bringing up the cheek injury. He's actually accusing somebody of slapping his son's face. Now, that's not fair. Like, who would hit his son's face? I mean, they really need to have an investigation to clear up that accusation, because that's not fair, because that's implying that somebody close to him near the time of his disappearance might have actually physically assaulted or hit him. That's not nice. And who would that be other than probably Mr. A that hit him on the cheek? And especially when Mr. A said, when he called his parents that SJM wouldn't wake up. And what do you do when somebody doesn't wake up? You kind of slap them on the face. And if they're really not waking up and you're drunk too, you probably slap them real hard, like slap, 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 slap. And if they still don't wake up, you might kind of panic and just slap them really hard. And maybe that's what happened. Or maybe that's not what happened. That's probably why we need another investigation, so that we can really get some justice for Mr. A, so he can actually clear his reputation, because it's not fair for SJM's father to say that. He shouldn't say that, like, if it's not true. No, he shouldn't say that. Now, we are getting a little bit closer to the Bridge CCTV. So our favorite conservative YouTube channel, they have gotten some CCTV footage, but not the critical CCTV footage from the bridge. We do have some more footage of the boys from the reverse angle of them running to meet the Coupang Eats man. And they're running because actually they were really far away from the place where they had to meet. I mean, it is quite a trek. They had to go all the way in a loop. So understandably, they had to run. But still, I mean, from jazz hands to like having like, they call it manse in Korean, by going like, kind of like a gymnast, like, hey, Mr. A was going, having a happy time. And so we have that footage, but we don't have the footage from 3:30 to 4:30, which would be really, really, really helpful if we had another investigation. I mean, another investigation would really help clear things up and really help get us that footage if it still exists somehow, or explain how it just mysteriously disappeared so that this kind of situation doesn't happen again. And we do have some clarification now, because you know how SJM's father has been now a little bit more harsh on Mr. A's family, and some people might think it's a little bit unfair that he's saying Mr. A's family is sort of lying about their sincerity about looking for SJM that morning. But from the CCTV cameras, a lot of people were saying it didn't look like they were looking for a son at all. It looked like they were like cleaning up a crime scene. Well, that's not fair. They should also get the chance with a new investigation to clear up their good name. But from this new CCTV footage from the bridge, especially from 6 a.m. to 6:01 a.m., it looked like they were casually walking out of the park to the parking lot. But this was during a time when they said that they were searching for SJM. Like, they said that they were searching for SJM during this time. And the mother of SJM said that she sent them a text message, which we have evidence of, at 6:03 a.m. saying like, all right guys, we registered this with the police. You guys, you're probably tired. Go home. It's cool. We got this. And then Mr. A's mom says, oh yeah, Mr. A, like, his mind is just like, oh, like kind of frazzled. So yeah, okay. Let us know if you find anything. We'll go. And that was like at 6:03. So she's trying to make it look like, okay, we've been looking, and okay, since you say like we can go home, we'll go home now. But they were already peacing out like way before then. That's what the CCTV looks like. I mean, that's what the evidence shows. So if that is not the case, a new investigation would give them the opportunity to address the public and also like get it on record and have some sort of evidence that they can also submit that would say the contrary. So that's probably also why we need another investigation. All right, guys, so those are the reasons why we really need to now focus on justice for Mr. A and his family. And the best way to do that is opening up an investigation and focusing on what happened to SJM between the hour of 3:30 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. because the whole point of this investigation is not Mr. A, it's SJM and figuring out how he died. We really have to give closure to SJM's family, and that is how we give justice to SJM and we give justice to Mr. A and his family so that they can move on as well. Alright guys, well, we'll see you again next time. Bye.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.